Hola, en esta lección vamos a hablar sobre los mandatos de usted. Before watching this video, you might watch the video series on to commands. The usted commands talked about in this video will actually be quite similar to the rules applying to the negative to commands. Remember that we use to commands with people that we know, are familiar with, and are comfortable with, like children, pets, etc. But we would need the usted commands for people that we want to be more respectful towards and formal with. The negative to command forms were basically the to form in the present tense with the last vowel swapped. So if it usually had as, it would be es. If it usually had es, it would be as, with a couple exceptions. Now the usted commands are basically the negative to commands without an s on the end because the usted form is basically the to form without an s on the end. The best part is that the usted commands are the same for their affirmative and negative forms. To form them, take the present tense forms of the verbs in the yo form. Then take off the o. And, if they're AR verbs, add an e. Here are some examples. Hablar, llamar, pensar, y esperar. First we'll change them into the yo form in the present tense. So we'd have hablo, llamo, pienso, espero. Now we'll take off the o at the end and add an e to the end of the verbs. Hable, llame, piense, espere. So we have our usted commands. Now, if we want to make those negative, just put a no in front. Que fácil. Now with the ER and IR verbs, we'll take the yo form of the verb minus an O and then add an A to the end instead of an E. Let's see some ER verbs changed. Let's use comer, leer, volver, and tener. So first change them to the yo form, and we'll have como, leo, vuelvo, and tengo. And the reason we change these to the yo form first is because you notice with vuelvo, for example, it doesn't look like the infinitive. It's a little bit different with the stem change. And tener has a G, an extra letter inside of it. So we'll change those to the yo form in the present tense, and then we take off the O, and we're going to add an A. So we should have coma, lea, vuelva, tenga. And to make these negative, just put a no in front. No coma, no lea, no vuelva, no tenga. Now let's take a look at some IR verbs and their usted command forms. How about escribir, vivir, dormir, and decir? Okay, the yo forms would be escribo, vivo, duermo, and digo. Notice that dormir changes to duermo and decir changes to digo, so there's some spelling changes there. And take off the O and add an A to the end, so we should have escriba, viva, duerma, and diga. And to make these negative, just put a no in front. No escriba, no viva, no duerma, no diga. That's all there is to it. Not bad, right? But wait, there's a little bit more. I haven't told you about a few other minor things. First, if verbs end in car, gar, and zar, kind of like with the preterite, due to the e being at the end, they will have a slight spelling change. So if it ends in car, we're going to use QUE for the command. If it ends in GAR, we're going to make it GUE to keep that hard G sound. And if it ends in ZAR, we're going to make it CE just because. Then there are also always a few irregular verbs. That is, the ones that don't like to follow any rules. Remember which ones were irregulars with the to commands, or the negative to commands that is? They were dar, estar, ir, saber, and ser. And if we have pronouns like direct object pronouns, indirect object pronouns, or reflexive pronouns, they will follow the same rules as with to commands. If the usted command is affirmative, that means not negative, we'll attach it to the end. If it is negative, the pronouns will go before the verb phrase but after the no. Some examples. If I wanted to say tell them hi and use the usted command, dígales hola. So notice we're going to add the pronoun and put an accent mark on the second to last syllable before we add the pronoun on. No les diga hola. Then we're going to take that les and put it before the verb phrase after the no, like we would usually do it if it weren't a command. If I wanted to tell somebody to fall asleep, duérmase. If I wanted to say don't fall asleep, no se duerma. If I wanted to say get up, being polite, levántese. Don't get up, no se levante. And get out of here, go, váyase. Don't leave, don't go away, no se vaya. And eat it up, whatever it might be. La in this case, the food, cómasela, or no se la coma. Muy bien. That's all for this explanation of how we form usted commands in Spanish. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about this video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for updates on new Spanish video lessons. And you might check out the other videos on forming commands in Spanish in this series. If you'd like to practice the usted commands, click on this video. Or click on any of these videos to see how to form the other commands. Gracias por mirar y nos vemos.